Hey YouTube, welcome back to Tinker with Tools. Recently I picked up Craftsman's new RP drill driver and impact driver. Am I going to be more impressed than I was last time I reviewed these tools? Let's go ahead and find out on Tinker with Tools. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about new versions of Craftsman RP drill driver and impact driver. But first, I think we need to lay down the foundation of what exactly the RP line is. Well, just like over at DeWalt where you have their XR line, which is their top tier tools, RP was meant to be that for Craftsman. In fact, it stands for runtime and performance. And when we first got these tools, it almost felt a little bit disingenuous because although we were getting new tools, they were a downgrade from what we had previously on that Craftsman line. You see, before they had the RP line, they had their made in the USA with global materials brushless models, and both the impact driver and the drill driver at the time had more performance than what we were getting on this new RP line. But the other day I couldn't help but notice that we did have new Craftsman RP models, both a drill driver and an impact driver, and the numbers and specs did indicate that there should be an improvement here. More importantly, when I looked at this impact driver, I saw a lot of familiarities to the DeWalt DCF 845. Now, Craftsman and DeWalt are owned by the same company, Stanley Black & Decker, and so I've always known that Craftsman tools were essentially a little bit detuned older DeWalt versions or mid-tier DeWalt versions. But the DCF 845, that is an XR tool. That is a lot higher than where their tools had been kind of previously marketed. I wanted to see if Craftsman was finally giving us more in their RP lineup, and so I went ahead and picked up the drill driver and the impact driver. Now first, with the drill driver, we do get a decent size reduction, but we also saw a definite increase in claimed power. So the old model of drill driver featured 1900 max RPMs, the new one 2000 max RPMs. The old drill driver featured 340 units watts out, the new one 495. So right on paper, there should be a decent performance gain. When it comes to the impact drivers, this is the one that I'm most excited about. The Craftsman impact driver previously was very clearly a DeWalt DCF 787, which is not a terrible impact driver by any means, but it is basically one of the older models in the DeWalt lineup, and at that, it was one of their worst mid-tier options, with other impact drivers featuring better specs or smaller size. So having this as your flagship model, not necessarily something to write home about. This new one takes a lot of step forward, so let's go ahead and talk about them. The old model had 2800 max RPMs. This one jumps up to 3200, so an increase of 400 RPMs. The old model had 3500 impacts per minute. This one goes all the way up to 4200. And then in terms of torque, this one was down at 1500. This one goes all the way up to 1800 inch-pounds of torque. So what I want to do today is going to be try and answer 3 questions through testing. The 3 questions are going to be, are the new versions of the tools improvements over the previous generation of RP models? The second question is, I did also pick up a couple of their 4 amp hour batteries, and I want to test the included batteries, the 1.5 amp hour that comes with their kits, and then I want to test it on the 4 amp hour and see what type of improvement you're getting on each tool. Lastly, I want to compare them to a couple of different models of DeWalt tools to see, are we actually getting DeWalt level performance in these new tools, or are we still getting a detuned version? So those are the 3 questions I want to answer. We're going to do both some impact driving test and some drill testing, and then we'll go ahead and talk about them when we come back here. All right, so there you have the performance testing. Remember, we're trying to answer 3 questions here. And first, I want to cover those 3 questions for the impact drivers. So the first one is, are we getting more performance with the new RP model over the previous generation? That is going to be a resounding yes. The old one had posted a time 30.43 seconds for all 7 tests. The new one was down at 16.91. So just a really nice improvement there. Now the next question is there a big difference between the 2 different batteries? And on the impact driver, we did see a difference in performance with 22% improvement on the old impact driver, 19% improvement on the new impact driver. And so with both of those, you definitely are seeing a bit of a performance improvement moving to the bigger battery. Now, the next question is the new RP impact driver going to be a worthy competitor to this DCF 845? And that's another one where it did beat it. Yes, it actually posted the 16.91 seconds time versus 18.57 here. All right, so with the impact drivers then, I think definitely a resounding yes. The impact driver did get better in a lot of ways. We'll talk about some of the downside here in a minute, but so far, I think these are some pretty impressive improvement numbers one generation to the next. Now with the drills, you did also kind of get an answer to that first question of, is it going to be an improvement over the previous generation? Yes, it is. It definitely felt stronger. It felt faster. And the compact size of it compared to the old one does feel like an improvement. And so overall, yes, it is an improvement over that. Once again, it didn't quite cut the time in half, but about 2/3 the amount of time to perform the 3 tests with this drill versus the older one. And so a nice improvement there. Next question is, did it improve substantially in the new batteries? The older drill saw an 11% improvement on the bigger battery. The newer drill saw 17%. I do think that we didn't push these very far into some larger type drill bits. And I think if you had, you'd see that gap start wide. And on the final test, you really did see it kind of start spreading out a little bit more than it had on some of the other tests. And so I definitely think that it will still make a difference. We just maybe didn't push it as far in the testing today to be able to truly see that. Is it going to be as good as the DeWalt drills? That's where I think I got probably the most surprising result of the night, is that both of the DeWalt drills that we tested the 794 and the 799. And the difference between those 2 drills, other than some size and one being a hammer drill and one not, is the 799 has a more performant motor in there with a much higher unit watts out rating. What we saw here tonight, though, is a little bit different than just that raw unit watts out, because the higher RPM of the Craftsman drill being all the way up at 2,000 RPMs, where both of the DeWalt drills were down at 1650. Given the fact that we just didn't really push these drills too far tonight, we did see the Craftsman drill finish ahead of either one of the DeWalt drills by a decently healthy margin. So then I guess it comes down to, would I recommend this Craftsman over either of these DeWalts? Gets a little tricky. If all you're talking about is performance, yes, I think I prefer the way that this Craftsman performs better than either one of the DeWalts. But with that said, size obviously does matter, and especially the 794 is a much smaller drill, being the drill driver version of what this drill driver is from Craftsman. And so if you just want a compact size, the DeWalt is still going to get that. But if that's not an important factor in your decision, I do think that this drill was actually nicer to use in terms of just raw performance. It felt stronger, and that was definitely noticeable in those performance testing numbers as well. All right, so then with more performance across the board with both tools, seems like it would be a no-brainer to recommend these as a nice improvement if you're on the Craftsman line, or if you're just looking for a nice budget-friendly line. That's where I do need to point out one glaring flaw with both of these tools, and that's the trigger. On the first generation of Craftsman RP lines, I felt they had a very DeWalt-like trigger, which was not the lightest trigger in the world, but it definitely had a good feel to it, and it had good modularity between when you start to press the trigger and all the way to when it's fully depressed. The new impact driver especially is a bit of a train wreck in my opinion with that. Early on in my testing, I got a comment from one of the viewers that said that speed 1 was just way too fast and was an utter mess on the tool. To be able to test that out, I decided to go ahead and take this impact driver and try some more sensitive tasks where I definitely would want it down in a lower RPM setting. Every single time I tried to do it, the speed at the tip-in point on the trigger was just too fast, and basically you're almost at that full RPMs, which is an odd 1400 RPMs, which is faster than most impact drivers that have speed modes down in their lowest setting. And it was definitely noticeable on this tool that it just feels a bit too fast. and with no modularity in how much it goes, or very little modularity in that trigger, it honestly just feels like it's all or nothing down at that speed 1. Because of that, this is a tool that I've actually gone ahead and told my wife, if you need to use an impact driver, don't pick that one up. The trigger is terrible. If we had gotten the trigger on the old tool, you would hear nothing but kind of glowing praise from me about this improvement, especially in the impact driver. Now, the drill driver is not quite as bad. It does seem to have a bit more modularity. It's not as light as the old drill driver, but overall, I don't think I'd be pointing it out as much on the drill, even though it is a heavier trigger. All right, so then the last point of these is just going to be the price. Right now, either one of these bare tools is $99. The kits, I believe, are both $139. I know the impact driver is. And in that kit, you get 2 batteries and a charger and the tool for $139. I think the better option, and the one that I chose to go with, is to buy both of them together in a kit for $199. It still comes with 2 batteries and a charger, but then you also right now get to pick up 2 free tools. So I got 4 tools and 2 batteries for $199. And then going for the 2 4-amp-hour batteries, I got those for $79. So all told, for $279, I've got 4 batteries, 4 tools, and a charger. And honestly, at that point, that value seems worth it. I'm just not sure the bare tool price of these tools really makes sense, especially with the impact driver where it's at $99 bare tool. Right now, you can get that DeWalt DCF 845 for $99 as well. Now, when the DeWalt goes back up to $149 when it's not on sale, that becomes a bit more intriguing. I think for me, still the trigger, it's just hard to recommend this tool. Overall, I wish I could give it a more glowing recommendation. If you don't need to really have some feathery touch with the trigger, it's an excellent improvement. If you really crave kind of having fine control, I might tell you to avoid this one. If you have this new impact driver and have felt that same way about the trigger, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. If you have a different opinion of it, let me hear that too. Did I just get a dud? That's kind of what I want to find out with this tool. Now, if you have any questions about either one of these tools or any of the tools we talked about tonight, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below. As always, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Make sure to turn on notifications so you get notified when I put out new content. And especially at this time of the year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you for all the support, and until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.